r/ProRevenge MIL called police with lies, so I exposed her with security footage. The knock on my door at 7 a.m. was sharp, authoritative, and absolutely terrifying. I stumbled out of bed in my pajamas, heart racing as I peered through the peephole to see two uniformed police officers standing on my front porch. My husband Jake was already at work, and I was alone, trying to process why the hell law enforcement was at my door before I'd even had my first cup of coffee. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you about an incident that was reported yesterday evening," the taller officer said when I cracked the door open, my hands literally shaking. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes, that's me." "What's this about?" I managed to croak out, though deep down I had a sinking feeling I already knew. "We received a report that you physically assaulted and threatened a family member during a gathering yesterday. We need you to come down to the station for questioning." The words hit me like a freight train. Physical assault. Threats. My mind immediately flashed to yesterday's disastrous family dinner at my in-laws' house, and I knew exactly who had made this report. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had finally done it. She'd actually called the police with lies. "There's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even as my world started crumbling around me. "I didn't assault anyone. I didn't threaten anyone." But even as I said it, I knew how this looked. I'm a 28-year-old high school English teacher with no criminal record, but that wouldn't matter if Patricia was spinning her web of lies. She'd been gunning for me since the day Jake and I got engaged 2 years ago, and she'd made it crystal clear that she thought her precious son had married beneath him. The officers were professional but firm. They explained that the alleged victim claimed I had violently shoved her and told her I would make her pay for interfering in my marriage. The accusations were so outrageous, so completely fabricated, that I almost laughed. Almost. Except laughing probably wouldn't help my case when I was potentially facing assault charges. As I got dressed with shaking hands, my mind raced through the events of yesterday evening. We'd gone to Jake's parents' house for what was supposed to be a peaceful family dinner. Instead, it had turned into another one of Patricia's masterclass performances in passive-aggressive manipulation. She'd spent the entire evening making snide comments about my cooking, my housekeeping, my career, and my inability to give her grandchildren yet. The final straw had come when she'd cornered me in the kitchen and launched into a tirade about how I was poisoning her relationship with her son. I'd finally stood up for myself, told her that her behavior was unacceptable, and walked away. That was it. No shoving, no threats, just me finally growing a spine and refusing to be her verbal punching bag. But apparently, in Patricia's twisted version of reality, my moment of backbone had transformed into a violent assault worthy of criminal charges. As I followed the officers to their patrol car, trying to ignore the curious stares of my neighbors, one thought kept running through my mind: this could destroy everything. My teaching career, my reputation, my marriage, all of it could be gone because of Patricia's lies. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Jake and I had installed a comprehensive security system just 3 weeks ago. And every single second of yesterday's incident was recorded in crystal clear high definition. The police station was exactly as cold and intimidating as you'd expect. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I sat in a stark interview room, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had gone white. Detective Rodriguez sat across from me, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor that made it clear she'd heard every sob story in the book. "Tell me about your relationship with Patricia Mitchell," she said, pen poised over her notepad. "Where did I even begin? How do you explain 2 years of psychological warfare to someone who's never lived it? It's complicated. She's never approved of my marriage to her son. She's made that very clear from day one. Has there been previous conflict between you two?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Detective, there's been nothing but conflict. She's called my principal to complain about my unprofessional behavior at school events. She's shown up at my workplace unannounced to check on me. She's told extended family members that I'm trying to isolate Jake from his family. She even hired a private investigator last year to dig up dirt on my background." Detective Rodriguez's eyebrows shot up. "A private investigator?" She was convinced I was hiding something scandalous. "Turns out my biggest secret is that I got a B- in college calculus." I tried to smile, but it felt hollow. "Look, I know how this sounds. Bitter daughter-in-law versus concerned mother. But Patricia has been systematically trying to destroy my marriage since the beginning. That may be true, but right now we need to focus on what happened yesterday evening. Mrs. Mitchell claims you became physically violent when she tried to have a conversation with you about family matters. That's not what happened." I leaned forward, desperation creeping into my voice. "She cornered me in the kitchen and started berating me. She called me a manipulative gold digger, said I was ruining her son's life, accused me of trying to turn him against his family. When I told her I wouldn't tolerate her abuse anymore and walked away, she grabbed my arm to stop me from leaving." "So there was physical contact?" My heart sank. "She grabbed me. I pulled away. That's it." Detective Rodriguez made notes, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Mitchell has some bruising on her forearm that's consistent with being grabbed or pushed." "Are you serious?" The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. "She's claiming I bruised her?" "Detective, I'm 5'4" and maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. Patricia is taller than me and outweighs me by at least 30 pounds. Adrenaline can make people stronger than they realize." I stared at her in disbelief. This was actually happening. Patricia had somehow managed to give herself bruises, or maybe they were from something completely unrelated, and now I was sitting in a police station being treated like a criminal. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're still investigating. Mrs. Mitchell wants to press charges for assault and intimidation. If the district attorney decides to move forward, you could be looking at misdemeanor charges, possibly even jail time depending on your criminal history." "I don't have a criminal history. I've never even gotten a speeding ticket." "That works in your favor. But Mrs. Mitchell is claiming this is part of an escalating pattern of harassment and threats." My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, just heard from Mom. "What the hell is going on? Call me ASAP." I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in around me. Patricia had gotten to him first, which meant she'd already started spinning her version of events. By the time I got out of here, who knew what lies she'd have planted in his head? But I still had one card to play. One card Patricia didn't know existed. Detective Rodriguez, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Before this goes any further, there's something you need to know. My husband and I recently installed a security system at our house. The entire incident yesterday was recorded. Her pen stopped moving. Recorded how? We have cameras throughout our home, including the kitchen where this supposed assault took place. Everything Patricia is claiming, it's all on video. For the first time since I'd sat down, I saw a flicker of genuine interest in the detective's eyes. You have footage of the incident? Every second of it. Jake and I installed the system 3 weeks ago after we had a break-in scare in our neighborhood. We hosted yesterday's dinner at our place, not at his parents' house like I said earlier. I was so rattled I mixed that up. Patricia came to our home, and every room she was in is covered by our cameras. Detective Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. Why didn't you mention this earlier? Because I'm terrified and not thinking straight, I admitted. This whole situation is insane. But yes, I have proof that Patricia is lying. We'll need to see that footage. Of course. I can give you access to our security system right now if you want. But even as I said it, a cold dread started creeping up my spine. I pulled out my phone to access our security app, confident that I was about to vindicate myself completely. The footage would show Patricia's verbal assault, her grabbing me, my calm response. It would expose her lies and end this nightmare. My hands froze as I stared at the screen. Is there a problem? Detective Rodriguez asked. There's an error message. My voice sounded strange, distant. It says no recordings found for selected date range. The detective's expression shifted, and I could practically see her mentally moving me back into the unreliable witness category. Technical difficulties? No, this doesn't make sense. I frantically tapped at my phone, trying different dates, different cameras. We tested this system thoroughly. It's been working perfectly for weeks. Ms. Mitchell, are you certain this footage exists? My stomach dropped as the implications hit me. Someone deleted it. Someone had to have deleted it. Who has access to your security system? Just Jake and me. We're the only ones with the passwords. But even as I said it, another horrible realization was dawning. Wait. Jake gave his mom our security code last month when she was going to stop by to water our plants while we were out of town. So Mrs. Mitchell knows how to disarm your security system? She knows the code to get into the house, yes. But the cameras are on a separate app with different passwords. I was talking fast now, my mind racing. Although Jake did mention that she's surprisingly tech-savvy for someone her age. She used to work in IT before she retired. Detective Rodriguez made more notes, but her body language had shifted. I could see the skepticism creeping back in. So let me understand this correctly. You claim to have video evidence that would exonerate you, but this evidence has mysteriously vanished from a system that only you, your husband, and the alleged victim have access to? I know how it sounds, but it sounds like you're scrambling to create reasonable doubt. Her voice had gotten noticeably cooler. Ms. Mitchell, making false claims about evidence is a serious matter. I'm not lying. The desperation in my voice was embarrassing, but I couldn't help it. Patricia must have figured out how to access our system and delete the footage. She's been planning this. That's a very serious accusation. You're suggesting Mrs. Mitchell not only filed a false police report but also committed what would essentially be evidence tampering? Put like that, it did sound paranoid and far-fetched. But I knew Patricia. I knew how calculating she could be, how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jake. Mom says you attacked her. What the hell, Sarah? I'm coming to the station. Now Patricia had my own husband questioning me, and my only proof had mysteriously vanished. The interview room felt like it was shrinking around me as Detective Rodriguez's skeptical gaze bore into my soul. I could practically hear my teaching career circling the drain, and the worst part was that I was starting to sound unhinged even to myself. Detective, please. I know this sounds crazy, but Patricia has been escalating her behavior for months. Just last week, she somehow got hold of my work schedule and showed up at the school during my lunch break to discuss my attitude problem in front of my colleagues. That's not illegal, Ms. Mitchell. But don't you see the pattern? She's been systematically undermining me, and now she's found a way to potentially destroy my career with one phone call. I was gripping my phone so hard I thought it might crack. She knows that assault charges would cost me my teaching license. Detective Rodriguez's expression remained neutral, but I caught her exchanging a look with the officer standing by the door. That look said everything I needed to know about how this was going. I think we should wait for your husband to arrive before we continue, she said, closing her notepad. He might be able to shed some light on the security system situation. My heart hammered against my ribs. Jake was coming here, and he was already primed with Patricia's version of events. She'd had a head start to plant seeds of doubt, to make him question everything he thought he knew about his wife versus his mother. 20 minutes later, Jake burst through the interview room door, his face a mask of confusion and anger. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his tie was askew, clear signs that he'd rushed here from whatever job site he was managing today. Sarah, what the hell is going on? His eyes searched my face like he was looking for signs of guilt. Mom called me crying, saying you lost it and attacked her. She's talking about getting a restraining order. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. After 2 years of marriage, after countless nights of me telling him about his mother's psychological warfare, he was still giving her the benefit of the doubt. Jake, I did not attack your mother. She's lying. Then why are the police involved? Why does she have bruises? Detective Rodriguez intervened. Mr. Mitchell, your wife claims there's security footage that would prove her innocence, but she says it's been deleted from your system. Jake's frown deepened. Our cameras have been working fine. I checked them just this morning before work. He pulled out his phone and opened our security app. See? Yesterday's footage should be right, here. His face went pale as he stared at the screen. What is it? I leaned forward, hope and terror warring in my chest. It's all gone. Not just yesterday, but the entire past week. His voice was barely a whisper. That's impossible. The system backs everything up to cloud storage automatically. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward with renewed interest. Has anyone else accessed your security system recently? No, just Sarah and me. We're the only ones with the login credentials. Jake was frantically tapping his phone. Wait, there's something weird here. It shows someone logged in remotely yesterday at 11:47 p.m. and mass deleted files. What time did you get home from your parents' house? The detective asked me. Around 9:30. Jake and I were both in bed by 10:15. Jake's face had gone from pale to ashen. This shows the deletion happened from an IP address that's not our home network. Someone accessed our system from outside the house. Can you trace that IP address? Detective Rodriguez asked. Jake was already pulling up more detailed logs. Oh my god. Sarah, this IP address is registered to my mother's internet service provider. Someone logged into our security system from Mom's house and deleted everything. The room fell silent except for the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. That's impossible, Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. Mom doesn't know our login information. She barely knows how to use email. But I was remembering Patricia's smug smile as she'd left our house yesterday, the way she'd lingered in the hallway, asking pointed questions about our fancy new cameras. She'd been planning this all along. Jake, remember last month when you gave your mom our alarm code? I said, my voice barely steady. You said she needed it to water our plants while we were gone for the weekend. Yeah, but that's just the house alarm. She doesn't know our security camera passwords. But even as Jake said it, doubt was creeping into his voice. Detective Rodriguez was taking notes again. Mr. Mitchell, walk me through exactly what information your mother has access to. Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his stress response. She has our alarm code, obviously. And she has a spare key that we never got back. But the camera system is completely separate. Different app, different passwords. Except, I said, the pieces clicking together in my mind. Remember when you had to reset the app last month because of that software update? You were frustrated and calling tech support? His face went white. Oh shit. What? Detective Rodriguez prompted. I was on the phone with technical support for like 2 hours, trying to get the app working again. Mom was at our house helping Sarah organize the guest room. I was so frustrated that when the tech guy asked for our login credentials to test the connection, I said them out loud. The silence that followed was deafening. She was in the same room? The detective asked. She was right there on the couch, pretending to read a magazine. Jake's voice cracked. But Mom's got this scary good memory. At her job before she retired, she was the go-to person for remembering everyone's passwords and system codes. I felt vindicated and terrified in equal measure. Jake, your mother has been planning this. Think about it, why would she suddenly decide to host dinner at our place yesterday instead of her house like usual? She wanted to be in our space, on camera, so she could set this whole thing up. But the bruises on her arm, Jake started. Could be from anything, I interrupted. She could have given them to herself, or they could be from gardening or whatever. The point is, she knew exactly how to make it look like I hurt her, and she knew she could delete the evidence afterward. Detective Rodriguez was studying the security logs on Jake's phone. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to need to confiscate this as evidence. We'll need to have our tech forensics team verify these findings. Of course, whatever you need. Jake handed over his phone, then turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time in months. Sarah, I am so sorry. I should have believed you about Mom's behavior. I kept telling myself she was just being protective, but this is premeditated evidence tampering to support a false police report, Detective Rodriguez finished grimly. If these logs are authentic, Mrs. Patricia Mitchell has committed several serious felonies. But even as relief started to wash over me, my phone rang. Jake's father's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Jake said immediately. I should. If Patricia's escalating this far, who knows what she's telling your dad? I swiped to accept the call. Hello, Robert? Sarah, thank God. Jake's father's voice was strained, almost panicked. You need to know, Patricia's not done. She's been calling everyone. Your principal, your coworkers, even your parents. She's telling them all that you've had a complete mental breakdown and that you're dangerous. My blood turned to ice. What exactly is she saying? That you've been making threats against the whole family for weeks. That Jake's been covering for you because he's scared. She's even claiming you've been stealing from us. Robert's voice dropped to a whisper. Sarah, she's got photos. What kind of photos? Pictures of bruises on her arms, screenshots of what look like threatening text messages from your number. She's built an entire case against you. Jake grabbed my arm. Put it on speaker. Dad, it's Jake. What photos? What text messages? Son, she's showing everyone these horrible messages supposedly from Sarah's phone. Threats about making the family pay, about how she'll destroy anyone who tries to break up your marriage. They look real, Jake. The phone number matches Sarah's. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Patricia hadn't just deleted our security footage, she'd fabricated evidence to replace it. Robert, I managed to say, I never sent any threatening messages to anyone. I want to believe you, honey, but Patricia's been planning this presentation for hours. She's got dates, times, screenshots. She's even got photos of damage to her car that she says you did. Dad, where is Mom now? Jake asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. She left about an hour ago. Said she had more evidence to collect. I met Jake's eyes across the interview room table, and I could see he was thinking the same thing I was. Patricia wasn't done destroying me yet. The color drained from Jake's face as his father's words sank in. Dad, what do you mean she went to collect more evidence? I don't know, son. She had this look in her eyes, determined, almost manic. She kept muttering about finishing this once and for all and grabbed that big accordion folder she keeps all her important documents in. Detective Rodriguez motioned for me to keep Robert on the line as she stepped out to make a phone call. Through the glass window, I could see her speaking urgently to someone, probably calling for backup or additional units. Robert, did Patricia say where she was going? I asked, trying to keep my voice level even as panic clawed at my throat. No, but she was dressed up like she was going somewhere official. You know how she gets when she means business, the good pearls, the briefcase, that navy suit she wore to Jake's graduation. My stomach dropped. She's going to my school. Jake's eyes widened. It's Thursday. You'd normally be there for parent-teacher conferences tonight. Oh God, I whispered. She's going to ambush my principal and parents in front of everyone. If she shows up with fake evidence during conferences, it'll be a public spectacle. Every parent, every colleague will witness her accusing me of being unstable and violent. Dad, you have to stop her, Jake said into the phone. I tried, son. But you know how your mother gets when she's on a mission. She told me to stay out of it unless I wanted to be complicit in enabling Sarah's dangerous behavior. Detective Rodriguez returned, her expression grim. I've dispatched units to your school, Ms. Mitchell. But we need to move fast. If Mrs. Mitchell is planning to cause a scene during parent conferences, she could do significant damage to your reputation before we can intervene. How is she even getting away with this? I asked, frustration and helplessness warring in my voice. She's committed evidence tampering, filing false reports, and now she's about to commit slander in front of half the town. Because she's been very careful, the detective replied. Everything she's done so far could be explained away as a distraught mother-in-law trying to protect her family. The deleted security footage could be blamed on technical glitches. The fake text messages, if that's what they are, would need forensic analysis to prove they're fabricated. My phone buzzed with a call from my principal, Dr. Martinez. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely answer. Sarah? I need you to come to the school immediately. Dr. Martinez's voice was strained. There's been a situation. What kind of situation? Your mother-in-law is here. She's demanding to speak with me and several parents about what she calls concerning behavior patterns she's observed. She's got documentation, photos, messages. Sarah, this looks serious. Dr. Martinez, please don't believe anything she shows you. Patricia has been harassing me for months, and now she's fabricated evidence to make me look unstable. There was a long pause. Sarah, she's showing me text messages from your phone number. Very disturbing messages about making people pay for interfering in your marriage. Those are fake. I never sent anything like that. She also has photos of property damage and injuries she claims you inflicted. I'm looking at pictures of what appears to be intentional scratches on her car with your house keys. My blood ran cold. She keyed her own car and blamed me? Sarah, I need you to understand how this looks. I've got the Hendersons here for their daughter's conference, and they're seeing all of this. Word is going to spread that I have a teacher under investigation for stalking and assault. Jake grabbed the phone from me. Dr. Martinez, this is Jake, Sarah's husband. My mother is lying. We have proof that she's been systematically harassing Sarah and has now escalated to fabricating evidence. I want to believe that, Jake, but I'm looking at very convincing documentation. I'm going to have to recommend that Sarah take immediate administrative leave until this is resolved. My teaching career, everything I'd worked for, was crumbling in real time. Detective Rodriguez took the phone. Dr. Martinez, this is Detective Rodriguez with the Metropolitan Police. I need you to preserve any materials Mrs. Mitchell has provided and prevent her from leaving the premises. She's currently under investigation for filing false reports and evidence tampering. But even as she spoke, I could hear shouting in the background through the phone. Patricia's voice, loud and theatrical, carrying through the school hallways. She threatened my family. She's dangerous. That woman has no business being around children. Other voices joined in, confused parents, concerned teachers, the chaos of a public accusation in the middle of a school evening. She's already done it, I whispered. Even if we prove she's lying, everyone heard her. Everyone's going to remember this. Jake's jaw was set in a way I'd never seen before. No. We're going to stop this right now. The drive to my school felt like a funeral procession. Jake sat rigid in the passenger seat while Detective Rodriguez followed behind us in her unmarked car, both of us lost in our own spirals of dread about what we'd find when we arrived. I can see the news vans, Jake said grimly as we turned onto the school street. She called the media. My heart sank even further, which I hadn't thought was possible. 3 local news trucks were parked outside Jefferson High, their satellite dishes extended like mechanical vultures waiting to feast on my career's corpse. Parents were clustered in small groups on the sidewalk, some filming with their phones, others talking in hushed, urgent tones. Of course she did, I whispered. She probably told them there was a dangerous teacher on campus. Patricia never does anything halfway. As we pulled into the parking lot, I could see through the school's main windows that chaos had erupted inside. Parents were gathered in the hallway instead of classrooms, and I could make out my principal Dr. Martinez frantically trying to manage multiple conversations at once. But it was the woman at the center of it all who made my blood run cold. Patricia stood in the middle of the main hallway like she was holding court, her navy suit immaculate, her silver hair perfectly styled, surrounded by a growing crowd of parents and teachers. She had her accordion folder open on a nearby table, displaying what looked like a carefully organized presentation of evidence against me. Even from the parking lot, I could see her gesturing dramatically, playing the role of the concerned family member who'd been forced to come forward to protect innocent children from an unstable teacher. She's actually enjoying this, Jake said, his voice hollow with realization. Look at her face. She's loving every second of this attention. He was right. Through the window, I could see Patricia's expression, animated, engaged, feeding off the shocked gasps and concerned murmurs of her audience. This wasn't just about destroying me anymore. This was her moment to be the hero of her own twisted narrative. Detective Rodriguez appeared at my car window. Ms. Mitchell, I need you to stay in the vehicle for now. Given the crowd inside and the media presence, your appearance could escalate the situation. But that's my workplace, I protested. Those are my colleagues and they're listening to her lies. I understand, but we need to handle this strategically. Let me go in first and assess the situation. As the detective walked toward the school entrance, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media tags, word was spreading faster than wildfire through our small town's interconnected networks. The first text was from my colleague Jennifer. Sarah, what's happening? Your MIL is here showing photos of threatening messages you supposedly sent. Then from my friend Lisa, girl, you're trending on the local Facebook groups. This looks bad. But it was the message from my own mother that made my stomach drop. Honey, Patricia called me an hour ago. She said you've been having a breakdown and that Jake is scared of you. She sounded so convincing. Please tell me this isn't true. Jake, I said, my voice cracking. She called my parents. My own mother is questioning whether I'm mentally stable. Jake's face went white as his phone started buzzing too. She's been busy. I've got messages from my cousins, my college friends, even my old boss. She's contacted everyone we know. Through the school windows, I watched Detective Rodriguez approach Patricia, badge visible. The crowd around my mother-in-law shifted nervously, but Patricia herself straightened up, her chin lifting defiantly. Even from the parking lot, I could see her mouth moving rapidly, probably explaining to the detective how she was just a worried family member trying to protect the community. Then Patricia did something that made my blood freeze. She pulled out her phone, pointed it directly toward our car in the parking lot, and started recording. She's filming us, Jake breathed. She's going to claim we came here to intimidate her. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. Patricia had orchestrated every single detail of this public destruction. The timing during parent conferences, the media presence, even our arrival, she planned it all to paint herself as the victim and me as the unhinged aggressor who couldn't leave well enough alone. As Patricia pointed her phone at us through the window, I watched her lips moving in what I could only assume was a running commentary for her video. She was probably narrating something like, and here they come to threaten me again, just like I told everyone they would. We need to leave, I said, panic rising in my throat. Right now. She's setting us up. But Jake was staring at his mother with an expression I'd never seen before, pure, cold fury mixed with something that looked like grief. No. I'm done running from her manipulations. Before I could stop him, he was out of the car and striding toward the school entrance. I scrambled after him, my heart hammering against my ribs as I realized Patricia's phone was still recording, capturing every second of what would undoubtedly be spun as her son and daughter-in-law confronting her. The moment we stepped through the school doors, the hallway fell silent. 30-some parents, teachers, and staff members turned to stare at us like we were dangerous animals who'd wandered into their safe space. I could practically feel their judgment pressing against my skin. Patricia lowered her phone but kept recording, her eyes bright with triumph. And there she is, she announced to the crowd, her voice carrying perfectly in the hushed hallway. I told you she wouldn't be able to stay away. Dr. Martinez hurried over, his face flushed with stress and embarrassment. Sarah, I asked you not to come here tonight. This situation is already complicated enough. Dr. Martinez, I have evidence that everything Mrs. Mitchell has shown you is fabricated, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the sea of hostile faces surrounding us. But Patricia was already moving, stepping closer to me with her phone held high. Evidence? Like the security footage you claimed existed but mysteriously disappeared? More lies to cover up your increasingly erratic behavior? The crowd murmured, and I caught fragments of whispered conversations, deleted evidence. Sounds guilty. Poor woman just trying to protect her family. Detective Rodriguez appeared at Patricia's shoulder. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to stop recording and step away from your daughter-in-law. I'm documenting her harassment for my safety, Patricia replied smoothly, but she didn't lower the phone. This young woman has been escalating her threats for weeks, and now she's followed me to a school full of children. I think my concerns about her stability are being validated in real time. It was masterfully done. Every word out of Patricia's mouth sounded reasonable to someone who didn't know the full context. She was painting herself as the frightened victim while making my mere presence seem like evidence of dangerous obsession. Jake stepped forward, and the raw pain in his voice silenced even Patricia's performance. Mom, stop. Just stop. For the first time since we'd arrived, uncertainty flickered across Patricia's face. Jakey, honey, I know this is hard, but... I said stop. His voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah's career, her reputation, our marriage, you poisoned all of it with your lies. The crowd was riveted now, sensing family drama unfolding in real time. I could see phones coming out as parents started their own recordings. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath her concerned mother facade. I'm protecting you from a woman who's clearly unstable. Look at the evidence. What evidence, Mom? Jake's voice rose, echoing off the hallway walls. The text messages you faked? The security footage you deleted? The bruises you gave yourself? Gasps rippled through the crowd, but Patricia recovered quickly. Those are serious accusations, son. I think your wife has filled your head with paranoid delusions. That's when Jake pulled out a tablet I hadn't seen him grab from the car. Actually, Mom, let me show everyone some real evidence. The tablet in Jake's hand seemed to glow with promise, but as he swiped through screens, his confident expression began to crumble. The crowd pressed closer, sensing another dramatic turn, while Patricia watched with what I was starting to recognize as barely concealed amusement. The backup file should be right here, Jake muttered, his fingers flying across the screen. Our security system automatically uploads to multiple cloud servers. She couldn't have deleted everything. But with each swipe, each frustrated tap, his shoulders sagged further. Patricia's smile grew wider. Technical difficulties again, son, she asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It seems like every piece of evidence you two claim to have just disappears when it's needed most. Detective Rodriguez stepped closer to examine Jake's tablet. Mr. Mitchell, what exactly are you trying to show us? The backup files from our security system should prove that Mom accessed our cameras remotely and deleted the footage, Jake said, but his voice lacked the conviction it had held moments before. But it's like everything's been wiped. Not just the main system, but all the backup servers too. My heart sank as I watched Patricia's performance shift into higher gear. She turned to address the crowd directly, her voice taking on the tone of a patient teacher explaining something obvious to confused students. This is exactly the kind of behavior I've been trying to document, she announced, gesturing toward Jake's frantic attempts to find the files. Paranoid claims about deleted evidence, accusations that I somehow masterminded an elaborate conspiracy. Does this sound like rational thinking to any of you? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hallway. Parents nodded, exchanging meaningful looks. I could practically see them making mental notes to request different teachers for their children next year. Mrs. Henderson, whose daughter Emma was in my AP English class, spoke up from the crowd. I have to say, this does explain some concerning behaviors we've noticed. Emma mentioned that Ms. Mitchell seemed increasingly agitated during recent classes. That's not true, I started to protest, but Patricia smoothly cut me off. Thank you for speaking up, she said to Mrs. Henderson, pulling out her folder of fabricated evidence. This supports the pattern of erratic workplace behavior I've documented. Notice the dates here correspond with what your daughter observed. She spread out what looked like a detailed timeline across a nearby table, complete with typed notes, highlighted dates, and those damning fake text messages. The presentation was so professional, so thorough, that even I had to admire its twisted craftsmanship. May I? Dr. Martinez reached for the folder, his expression grave as he scanned Patricia's materials. These are very detailed logs of concerning incidents. I started keeping records when I realized how serious this was becoming, Patricia explained, her voice heavy with reluctant duty. I kept hoping things would improve, but when she began making explicit threats. Jake suddenly looked up from his tablet, his face pale with a new realization. Mom, how did you know about our backup cloud servers? I never told you we had multiple storage systems. For the first time, Patricia's composure faltered slightly. You mentioned it during one of our conversations about home security. No, I didn't. Jake's voice was getting stronger again. The backup servers were configured by our installation company. I don't even fully understand how they work. There's no way you could have known about them unless... Unless what, son? But Patricia's voice had lost some of its confident warmth. Unless you researched our exact security model and figured out how to access every component of the system. Jake turned to address the crowd. My mother didn't just stumble onto our camera password. She planned this entire scenario. But even as Jake spoke, I noticed Patricia's phone was still recording, and she positioned herself perfectly to capture his increasingly agitated gestures and raised voice. To anyone watching the video later, it would look like an unstable man having a breakdown in a school hallway. Detective Rodriguez was studying Patricia's documentation with growing interest. Mrs. Mitchell, some of these timestamps are very precise. How did you know exactly when these alleged incidents occurred? Before Patricia could answer, Dr. Martinez's radio crackled to life. We have news crews requesting statement from the school administration about the ongoing incident. How should we respond? The media circus was about to get worse, and Patricia's satisfied expression told me she was counting on it. The radio crackle about news crews sent a jolt of terror through me, but it was Patricia's reaction that made my blood run cold. She didn't look surprised or concerned about the media attention, she looked expectant, like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Actually, Detective, Patricia said, her voice taking on a tone of reluctant revelation, there's something else I need to show you. Something I discovered just this afternoon that made me realize how dangerous this situation has become. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out what looked like printed emails. My stomach dropped as I recognized the Jefferson High School letterhead. These are communications between Sarah and one of her students, Patricia announced, holding the papers high enough for everyone to see. Inappropriate messages that cross every professional boundary. That's impossible, I breathed, but the words came out as barely a whisper. Dr. Martinez's face went ashen as Patricia handed him the printouts. These appear to be from your school email account, Sarah. Personal discussions with a student about intimate matters. Let me see those, I demanded, reaching for the papers, but Patricia smoothly pulled them back. I think they should remain with the authorities, she said primly. Given their sensitive nature involving a minor. Jake grabbed my arm. Sarah, please tell me you didn't. The doubt in his voice, even after everything we'd just discovered about his mother's manipulations, hit me like a physical blow. Jake, you can't seriously think I would ever communicate inappropriately with a student. But I could see the uncertainty creeping into his eyes, and I realized Patricia had just played her masterstroke. Even if we eventually proved the assault charges were fabricated, even if we exposed her lies about the security system, these fake emails would destroy me completely. Detective Rodriguez was studying the documents with increased interest. Ms. Mitchell, these emails are dated from last week. They show ongoing communication with a student identified as Brandon M. Are you familiar with this student? My mind raced. Brandon Martinez, Dr. Martinez's own son, who was in my third period English class. Of course Patricia would pick him. Any investigation would involve my principal personally, making everything exponentially more complicated. Brandon is in my class, but I would never. I started, then stopped as another horrifying realization hit me. Oh my god. Patricia, you've been monitoring my work email account. That's a very serious accusation, Patricia replied smoothly. I simply received these concerning messages through a concerned party who wished to remain anonymous. But I was remembering now, 3 weeks ago, when Patricia had been at our house helping organize the guest room, she'd asked to borrow my laptop to look up a recipe. I'd given her my password because Jake was on the phone with tech support and I was running late for a faculty meeting. You accessed my school email when you were at our house, I said, my voice rising with anger and terror. You've been monitoring my communications with students for weeks. Dr. Martinez, Patricia said, completely ignoring my accusation, I think you can see why I felt compelled to come forward tonight. This woman has unsupervised access to children every day. The crowd of parents erupted in concerned murmurs. I caught fragments of panicked conversations, my daughter's in her class. How long has this been going on? We trusted her with our kids. Mrs. Henderson's voice cut through the noise, I'm calling my husband. We need to know if Emma ever received inappropriate messages. Wait. I shouted desperately. None of this is real. Check the email headers, examine the metadata, there has to be digital evidence that these are fabricated. But Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio, calling for additional units and what sounded like someone from the Crimes Against Children division. Patricia's satisfied smile told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't just planned to destroy my marriage or my career, she'd crafted a scenario that would brand me as a predator, ensuring I could never teach again anywhere. The news crews outside were about to have their story of the decade. My legs nearly gave out as I watched Detective Rodriguez step away to make her radio call about crimes against children. The words predator and inappropriate contact with minors would follow me for the rest of my life, even if I eventually proved Patricia's lies. In a small town like ours, whispers and speculation had a way of becoming permanent truth. Sarah, Dr. Martinez said quietly, pulling me aside as the crowd continued to buzz with horrified excitement, I have to ask you directly. Have you ever had any inappropriate communication with Brandon or any other student? No. Never. Not once. My voice was steady despite the chaos erupting around us. Dr. Martinez, you've worked with me for 3 years. You know who I am as a teacher. I thought I did, he replied grimly. But these emails are very detailed, very specific. They reference conversations about Brandon's home life, his relationship concerns. How would someone fake that level of personal information? The question hit me like ice water. Patricia was right, the emails weren't just fabricated, they contained real details that only someone with access to student information could know. Which meant she hadn't just hacked my email account. She's been accessing student records, I whispered, the pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. Patricia must have my login credentials for the school portal. She's been monitoring my students' personal information. Jake overheard and stepped closer. What are you saying? When she borrowed my laptop, she didn't just get my email password. She could have accessed everything, gradebooks, student emergency contacts, counseling notes, family situation reports. My hands were shaking as the full scope of Patricia's violation became clear. She's been stalking my students to create believable fake conversations. Dr. Martinez's expression shifted from disappointment to alarm. If someone has unauthorized access to our student information system, that's a massive privacy breach. We're talking about potential lawsuits from every family whose data was compromised. But Patricia was already moving to counter my latest revelation, approaching Detective Rodriguez as she finished her radio call. Officer, I'm concerned that Sarah is now making increasingly desperate accusations, she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. First she claimed I deleted security footage, then that I somehow hacked into multiple computer systems. This sounds like someone spiraling into paranoid delusions. The detective looked between us with obvious frustration. This situation is getting more complicated by the minute. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to provide any additional evidence you have to our digital forensics team. And Ms. Mitchell, she turned to me, you need to understand that pending investigation of these new allegations, you cannot have any contact with students. My teaching career was over. Even if we eventually proved everything was fabricated, the school district would never risk keeping a teacher who'd been investigated for inappropriate contact with minors. That's when Jake's phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Don't answer it, I said instinctively, but Jake was already swiping to accept. Hello? A young male voice came through the speaker, loud enough for several people nearby to hear. Mr. Mitchell? This is Brandon Martinez. I just saw the news online about Mrs. Mitchell. I need to tell someone that those emails aren't real. She never sent me anything like that. The hallway fell silent as Patricia's face went white. Brandon, where are you right now? Dr. Martinez stepped forward, recognizing his son's voice. I'm at home with Mom. Dad, Mrs. Mitchell never sent me weird messages. But someone has been texting me asking personal questions about our family and pretending to be doing a survey for the school. I saved the screenshots because it seemed sketchy. Patricia was backing toward the exit, but Detective Rodriguez moved to block her path. Brandon, the detective called out, we're going to need those screenshots. The moment Brandon's voice came through Jake's phone speaker, I watched 20 years of Patricia's carefully constructed maternal facade crumble in real time. Her eyes darted toward the exit like a cornered animal, but Detective Rodriguez had already positioned herself to block any escape route. Brandon, put your mother on the phone, Dr. Martinez called out, his voice tight with a mixture of relief and growing anger as he realized what his son was revealing. Dad, there's more, Brandon continued, his teenage voice carrying clearly through the silent hallway. The person texting me knew weird stuff about our family that's not public. Like about Mom's surgery last year, and about you working late on Thursdays for budget meetings. They were trying to get me to talk about my feelings and stuff. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no sound came out. For the first time all evening, she seemed completely unprepared for this turn of events. Jake stepped closer to his mother, his face a mask of disgust and disbelief. You contacted a 16-year-old boy. You manipulated a child to create fake evidence against my wife. I never, Patricia started, but her voice cracked. Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio again. I need a unit dispatched to the Martinez residence immediately to collect evidence. We have a potential case of adult manipulation of a minor in an evidence fabrication scheme. The crowd of parents was backing away from Patricia now, their earlier sympathy replaced by horrified realization. Mrs. Henderson grabbed her phone. I'm calling Emma right now to see if anyone's been contacting her with fake surveys. That's when Patricia made her fatal mistake. Instead of remaining quiet or asking for a lawyer, her narcissistic need to control the narrative took over. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising desperately as she addressed the crowd. I was protecting that boy from an unstable teacher. Someone had to investigate Sarah's behavior before she harmed a child. By impersonating school officials and extracting personal information from minors? Detective Rodriguez's voice was ice cold. Mrs. Mitchell, you're describing multiple felonies. But Patricia was spiraling now, her careful composure completely shattered. Sarah has been poisoning my son against his family for 2 years. She's manipulative, controlling. I had to do something before she destroyed him completely. Jake stepped back like he'd been slapped. Mom, listen to yourself. You've been stalking children to frame my wife for crimes she didn't commit. I was gathering evidence. Patricia shrieked, and several parents actually stepped backward at the venom in her voice. Evidence that she's unfit to be around children, evidence that she's dangerous. Dr. Martinez was staring at Patricia with undisguised revulsion. You violated the privacy of students at my school. You manipulated my own son. Do you have any idea what you've done? That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Ashley Chen from your AP class. Someone's been asking me weird questions about you. Should I call the police? I held up my phone with shaking hands. She's been contacting multiple students. Jake grabbed my phone and read the message aloud to the crowd. The reaction was immediate and explosive, parents pulling out their own phones to call their children, voices overlapping in panic and outrage. How many kids did you contact? Jake demanded, turning to face his mother. How many children did you manipulate for your sick game? But Patricia had retreated into herself, her eyes wild and unfocused as she realized the full scope of her exposure. The woman who'd spent months carefully orchestrating my destruction had finally overplayed her hand so dramatically that even she couldn't spin it. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward with handcuffs. Patricia Mitchell, you're under arrest for filing false police reports, evidence tampering, and unlawful contact with minors. As the cuffs clicked into place, Patricia looked directly at me with pure hatred burning in her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. The handcuffs clicking around Patricia's wrist should have felt like victory, but her venomous promise that this isn't over sent ice through my veins. Even as Detective Rodriguez read her Miranda rights, Patricia's eyes never left mine, and I could practically see the wheels turning behind her rage-filled stare. "Ma'am, you need to look at me, not at the victim," Detective Rodriguez said firmly, but Patricia's twisted smile told me the damage was already done. As they led her toward the exit, my phone exploded with notifications. Text after text from numbers I didn't recognize, and my stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. "Jake, look at this," I whispered, showing him the screen. Messages from students, parents, even people I'd never met were flooding in. But these weren't supportive, they were angry, accusatory. "You should be ashamed," read one. "How dare you drag that poor woman through this," said another. "We saw the whole thing on Facebook Live." Facebook Live? Jake grabbed my phone, scrolling through the messages with growing horror. Someone was streaming this entire confrontation? Dr. Martinez overheard and pulled out his own phone. "Oh no. Sarah, this is bad. The video already has over 2,000 views, and it's only been up for 20 minutes. He turned his screen toward us, and I watched in horror as a shaky phone recording showed Patricia being handcuffed while looking small and frail next to the imposing police officer. The angle made her look like a harmless grandmother being brutalized by authorities, while Jake and I appeared to loom threateningly in the background. "The person filming cut out all the parts where she was manipulating students," I said, my voice hollow. "It just shows an elderly woman being arrested while we stand there looking satisfied." Jake was reading comments on the video, his face growing paler by the second. "They're calling us elder abusers." Someone started a hashtag justice for Patricia. "Sarah, people are saying we framed her." The comments were brutal. That poor woman was just trying to protect children. These people destroyed evidence then had her arrested. The real predators are still walking free. Mrs. Henderson approached us, her expression conflicted. "I'm sorry, but I have to ask, are we sure Patricia was lying about everything? Because that video makes it look like you two orchestrated this whole scene to discredit her." "You were here," Jake said desperately. "You heard Brandon confirm that the emails were fake, that she was contacting students inappropriately." "I heard a phone call that could have been anyone," she replied uncomfortably. "And now there's video of your mother being arrested while you both watched without any emotion. It doesn't look good." My heart sank as I realized Patricia had achieved something even more devastating than I'd imagined. Even in defeat, even while being arrested for multiple felonies, she'd managed to position herself as a victim in the court of public opinion. Dr. Martinez was fielding phone calls from the school board, the local news stations, and what sounded like the district attorney's office. Each conversation grew more tense, and I caught enough fragments to know that the narrative was rapidly spinning out of control. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, grabbing my arm. "Before more news crews arrive." But as we headed toward the exit, Detective Rodriguez intercepted us. "Ms. Mitchell, we have a problem. Mrs. Mitchell's attorney just arrived, and they're claiming the arrest was orchestrated by you and your husband as retaliation for her legitimate concerns about your behavior." "What?" I stared at her in disbelief. "She was arrested because she was caught fabricating evidence and manipulating children." "I understand that, but her lawyer is very good, and they're already working the media angle. They're claiming this entire evening was a setup designed to discredit a concerned family member who was trying to protect students." Through the school's windows, I could see Patricia in the back of a police car, but instead of looking defeated, she was speaking animatedly to someone on a phone, probably giving interviews to news outlets, spinning her version of tonight's events. Jake's phone rang again. This time it was his father, and Robert's voice was strained when Jake answered. "Son, Patricia's lawyer called me. They're saying you and Sarah manipulated tonight's events to frame her. They want me to testify that Patricia has been genuinely concerned about Sarah's mental state for months." "Dad, you can't be serious. You heard the evidence." "I don't know what to believe anymore." "But Jake, there's something else. Patricia's been recording conversations with family members for weeks, and apparently she has recordings of you expressing concerns about Sarah's behavior." My blood turned to ice. "What recordings?" "Times when you vented to your mother about arguments with Sarah, moments when you questioned her reactions to family situations. Taken out of context, they make it sound like you've been afraid of your wife." Jake's face went wide as he realized the trap his mother had been building all along. She hadn't just been planning to destroy me, she'd been recording ammunition to destroy both of us if her initial plan failed. Patricia's revenge was just beginning. My hands were shaking as Jake's father's words sank in. Patricia hadn't just been planning a simple frame job, she'd been building an entire arsenal of weapons to destroy us both, including turning Jake's private moments of marital frustration into evidence of my supposed instability. "Dad, what exactly did she record?" Jake asked, his voice barely steady. "Remember last month when you called upset about Sarah snapping at you over the dirty dishes? And that time you mentioned she seemed paranoid about Mom's visits? Patricia has all of it, son. Hours of recordings where you sound genuinely concerned about your wife's mental state." The phone nearly slipped from Jake's trembling hands. I could see him mentally reviewing every private conversation he'd had with his mother, every moment of marital stress he'd shared in confidence, now realizing it had all been weaponized against us. Detective Rodriguez was listening to our conversation with growing concern. "Mr. Mitchell, if your mother has been secretly recording family members, that adds illegal wiretapping to her charges. But it also means we need to prepare for her defense team to use those recordings." "How is that legal?" I asked desperately. "She obtained them without consent. They might not be admissible in court, but they don't need to be. Her lawyer can leak selective clips to the media, paint a picture of a troubled marriage where even the husband was concerned about his wife's behavior." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a notification from the local news website. The headline made my stomach drop. "Exclusive. Family recordings suggest troubled teacher may have been exhibiting concerning behavior for months." "They work fast," Jake said grimly, reading over my shoulder. "Look at the timestamp. This article was published 5 minutes ago." I clicked on the link and felt my world collapse further. The article contained excerpts from Patricia's recordings, carefully edited to make Jake sound genuinely frightened of me. His voice, taken from a phone call where he'd been venting about a completely normal marital disagreement, was quoted as saying, "I don't know what to do about Sarah anymore, and she's becoming someone I don't recognize." "Jake, this makes you sound like a victim of domestic abuse," I whispered. "Because that's exactly what she wants," he replied, his voice hollow. "She's not just destroying you, Sarah. She's positioning herself as the hero who saved her son from an abusive marriage." Dr. Martinez approached us again, his expression grave. "Sarah, I just got off the phone with the superintendent. Given the media attention and the recordings that are being circulated, they're placing you on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation." "But the charges against Patricia prove she fabricated everything," I protested. "The recordings suggest there may have been legitimate reasons for concern, regardless of how Mrs. Mitchell chose to act on them," he replied uncomfortably. "The district has to protect itself from liability. My teaching career wasn't just over, it was being systematically demolished by a woman who was currently sitting in a police car, still orchestrating my destruction through her attorney and carefully planted evidence." Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled again. "Detective, we have a problem at the station. Mrs. Mitchell's lawyer is demanding her immediate release, claiming prosecutorial misconduct and coordinated harassment by the alleged victims." "On what grounds?" "They're arguing that tonight's events were orchestrated by Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell to frame their client, and they have media footage showing the suspects observing their victim's arrest with apparent satisfaction." I realized with growing horror that Patricia had planned for this exact scenario. Every angle, every possible outcome, she prepared a counter-narrative that painted her as the victim no matter what happened. She knew she might get arrested, I breathed. This was always part of her plan. Jake's phone buzzed with another call, this time from a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, a reporter's voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like your comment on the recordings that suggest you've been concerned about your wife's mental state for months. Do you believe your mother was justified in trying to protect you? The media circus had found us. And Patricia was conducting it from her jail cell." The reporter's question hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and I watched Jake's face transform from exhaustion to cold determination. Instead of hanging up, he put the call on speaker and stepped closer to the remaining crowd of parents and teachers. "You want to comment?" Jake's voice carried clearly through the school hallway. "Here's your comment. My mother spent months systematically stalking and manipulating children to fabricate evidence against my wife. She violated student privacy, hacked into school systems, and recorded private conversations without consent. Anyone portraying her as a victim is either criminally naive or complicit in her lies." The reporter tried to interrupt, but Jake wasn't finished. "And since you're also interested in recordings, let me play you something Patricia doesn't know I have." My heart stopped as Jake pulled up an app on his phone I'd never seen before. "What is that?" "Remember when I said Mom was surprisingly tech-savvy? Well, I learned a few things growing up with her, including how to use recording apps when I suspected someone was lying to me." Jake's fingers flew across the screen as he located a file dated 3 days ago. "This is Patricia talking to her neighbor about her master plan. She butt-dialed me and left a 20-minute voicemail." He pressed play, and Patricia's voice filled the hallway, crystal clear and absolutely damning. The beauty of it all is that even if they prove some of the evidence was fake, the recordings of Jake's complaints will make everyone doubt Sarah anyway. People will think where there's smoke, there's fire. And the student contact angle? Pure genius. Even if charges get dropped, no school district will ever hire her again. The hallway was dead silent except for Patricia's voice continuing. "I've already contacted 3 other school districts to warn them about Sarah's instability. By next week, she'll be unemployable in education anywhere in the state." "Jesus Christ," Dr. Martinez whispered. But the recording wasn't over. Patricia's voice turned gleeful, "And the best part? I've been documenting my emotional distress from Sarah's abuse for months. Once this all comes out, I'll have grounds for a substantial civil lawsuit. I'll own their little house and everything in it." Detective Rodriguez grabbed Jake's phone. "Mr. Mitchell, this recording is evidence of conspiracy and fraud. Why didn't you mention this earlier?" "Because I only found it an hour ago," Jake replied, his voice shaking with fury. "I was going through my voicemails trying to figure out how she'd gotten so much information about our lives, and there it was. 20 minutes of her explaining exactly how she planned to destroy Sarah's life for fun and profit." The reporter on the phone was frantically asking questions, but Jake ended the call. Within minutes, though, every phone in the hallway was ringing as news of the recording spread through social media faster than wildfire. I watched through the school windows as Patricia's lawyer's confident expression crumbled while he listened to something on his own phone. Across the parking lot, Patricia's face in the police car went from smug satisfaction to pure panic as she apparently realized her entire plan had just imploded. "Sarah," Dr. Martinez said quietly, "I owe you an enormous apology. The district will be reinstating you immediately, and will be pursuing charges against Mrs. Mitchell for her violations of student privacy." Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio. "Cancel that release request. We have additional evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and criminal stalking. Mrs. Mitchell is going to be staying with us for quite some time." As police cars surrounded Patricia's vehicle and additional charges were read through the window, she finally looked exactly like what she was, a bitter, defeated woman who'd overplayed her hand so spectacularly that her own narcissism had become the instrument of her destruction. The nightmare was finally over. And this time, Patricia had destroyed herself with her own recorded words.